make a folder connection to the N drive and bring in the Lab 8 data that way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So over here in the catalog pane, or you can go to the catalog window, doesn't matter. You're going to go to folders, right click, make a folder connection, and you're going to go into the N drive. You're going to go into classes, Spring 2020, NR319. You're going to find that Lab 8 data folder. Select it. So there we go. I'm going to hit OK. I think now is a good time to ask myself when the last time I saved was. So I'm going to go ahead and save my project. But now I have this Lab 8 data folder in here. So we can go into Lab 8 data. There's a separate folder for the dead man stuff, quote unquote. So I open up dead man stuff, and we want this PNG file. Well, we want this PNG file. We also want this geodatabase, actually. So I'm going to right-click and copy this PNG file. Copy. I'm going to go back to my project folder, so Lab 8 Remote, and I'm going to paste it in here. So now I have Deadman Park, not Diamond Park, Diamond Peak, because that was the in-class. Deadman Park is the out-of-class that I'm working on. Deadman Park MU, and I still want that geodatabase because it has this table in here that we need to make the assignment, to make the layout, basically to understand what the different management units are. So I'm just going to copy this whole geodatabase. There's a few ways you could copy it over, but I'm just going to try to copy it like this. Right-click and copy. Go back into my Lab 8. Right-click and paste. So once you're in your Lab 8 folder and you've copied over the Deadman Park MU PNG and this mu-data-lab 8 geodatabase file, you are now good. You don't need anything else from the N drive for right now. Eventually, you're going to want to copy over information for your locator map for making your layout, but that will be something else you can do a little later on. So I've already moved the data over into my folder. I can remove this folder connection, and let's see here. The next thing I'm going to do is go back into my map, and if I go into folders here, Lab 8, the stuff I've copied is now over here. So in just a moment, I'm going to bring this image onto the map, and I can go ahead and start digitizing that. In fact, I'll just go ahead and do that now. So you could go to the map ribbon, and you can hit Add Data, and you'd open up folders, your Lab 8 folder, and you're going to bring in that Dead Park MU PNG file. So I'm going to hit OK. So that file should show up here on my contents pane in just a moment, if all is well. But you might notice it doesn't show up here on the map, because right now this file doesn't have any spatial information stored with it. So what I'm going to want to do, if I wanted to, I could go zoom to layer, and we did this in the in-class lab as well. It just shows up in the ocean, and the upper left-hand corner is at 0 meters, 0 meters. So it's at like the reference point for this UTM zone. But obviously, we don't want it way out here in the ocean. We want to locate it somewhere in Colorado, because we're trying to get up there, and it's down here. So I'm going to go back to my coordinates UTM. I'm going to right-click that and zoom to layer. So the next step that we're doing is called georeferencing. And that means we're going to basically take that image that we were just looking at. Let's see here. So this image, imagine these 4 interior corners as the corners of that map quad we were looking at. So when we're looking at this, each of these 4 corners corresponds to the 4 corners inside this little map here with all these different fun polygons. So these are all different management units, is what the photo says, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But each of the 4 coordinates we created corresponds to one of the points on this map. So I'm going to go, what we're trying to do is tie the coordinates UTM to these 4 points. So to do that, right-click your coordinates UTM, go zoom to layer, and then make sure you go down and select Deadman Park MUPNG. So it's selected, which means it's highlighted. It's showing up in blue here. And when you do that, you should be able to go up here to the imagery ribbon, and you're going to click Georeference. So once you do that, you get this new georeference ribbon that shows up, and you have your image that you want to georeference selected. So we're going to go ahead and hit Fit to Display. And so it shows up here on the map. And our coordinates are like loosely close, but not exactly there. So what we're going to do is we're going to add control points. So we're going to take these 4 corners of our map and attach them to these 4 points that we know are the actual coordinates, the actual decimal degree coordinates. So we're going to go ahead and click Add Control Points. We're going to start on the upper left. So you're going to want to zoom in to that upper left corner. Let's see here, and you might have to do, let's see here. I need to be able to navigate. I don't have a mouse right now with me, so if you go to Explore, you can move the map. So I went to the map ribbon Explore, and I go back to Georeference. Too much stuff going on here. I'm going to keep zooming in till I see pretty closely. I see the corner of the map that I'm trying to georeference, and I see this point. So since I switched to Explore on the map ribbon, I have to go ahead and hit Add Control Points again to get back into what I'm trying to do. So, oh, I forgot about this. We have to make sure that snapping is on the Edit ribbon. So, sorry. Here, I'm going to head over to the Edit ribbon for just a second. Snapping is not on. So you want it to be highlighted in blue. You want it to be on. You also want to make sure these first 4 options are selected. In my experience, once snapping is on, usually these first 4 are automatically selected, but just to make sure. So back to my georeference ribbon, add control points. You're going to start, I find it easiest just to start in the inside of the black line. That's where I start. I just find it's easiest to be consistent with starting your point right there. So I get as close as I can within reason, but I still want to be able to see my control point. I click once, and then once I move over to my control point, it highlights here with the text of the name of the point. So if snapping is on, it's working, that should show up when you get close to it. You can go ahead and click once. If you are working on this and no text came up when you hovered the cursor over that point, what you need to do is save your project, close ArcGIS Pro, reopen ArcGIS Pro, and then start your georeference. So I was lucky, snapping's working for mine. The next thing we want to do is we want to go down to the lower left-hand corner of the map. So you always start with these opposite corners. So I started with this one. Now I'm going to go down here. I have to go back to Explore in order to navigate over there again. So I zoom in until I can see the corner of the map and my point. I think that's about as good as I'm going to get. So I'm going to go back to Georeference, and I'm going to hit Add Control Point. So I'm doing my second point now, the lower right-hand corner. So first I click here. This is the inside of that actual management unit map. And then I select my second point. Now we can do our third and fourth point, and they should already, so as we click, basically the map is adjusting to fit to our actual points. So our third and fourth point should be a little closer to the mark now. So let's see here. I'm just going to go ahead and do this upper right-hand corner if I can here. Kevin, stop texting me. I'm trying to teach class. Let's see here. And I'm going to go to Georeference, add control points, click in here, right on the inside of the line. There's point number 3. And last but not least, I have to go to explore one more time just to navigate there. But last but not least, I'm going to do this other point. And here we are. So at this point, I've done a pretty good job. So it knows that this 4th point is going to be pretty close to this corner. So georeference, add control point. I'm going to click here. And this time I'm going to double click. And there's the green arrow for where I clicked and the red arrow for maybe where it should be or something like that. I don't know exactly what that is, but that's just kind of a visualization of how errors might be associated with my work. Now, if I wanted to quality check it, which I can using the control point table, I would go over here and I would look at my residuals. The residuals kind of show how far off you were with consistency for basically clicking 4 corners of a rectangle and those points. So my numbers are pretty decent. As long as you're between 0 and 10, you should be pretty good. And I'm here just under 6, so I think that's going to do for me. And again, that's just sort of quality check. If you were a little bit above 10, it'd probably be okay. If you were pretty far above 10, that might mean that your map's going to have kind of some errors in terms of accuracy when you're digitizing your polygons, which we're going to start doing here in just a second. So now what we're going to do is we're going to save this as a new georeference. And the output raster data set, that's what we're going to call this one. And actually this default name, deadmanparkmu.tif, should be good to go. Let me double check here. So, coordinate system. I feel like it should already know that information, but let's see here. Coordinate system. Da, 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 da. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that's in 13N. So I clicked the globe here. It doesn't seem to want to let me do it, but the coordinate system, if you do click the one for your coordinates UTM, since we already projected that, that should be acceptable for what we need. But either way, you've named it deadmanparkmu.tif. We don't have to mess with this. There are other file types, but you can go ahead and export it. And this might take just a minute, but what this is doing is it's taking this image, which as you remember has no location associated with it. It was just floating in space when we zoomed to the layer. It is now tying the 4 corners of this image to our 4 coordinates UTM that we got from the degrees, minutes, seconds data that Rocky gave us. So if you were working for forestry department, someone handed you an old hand-drawn map of the park, but you knew where a few corners were from that map, you would have the opportunity potentially to use those 4 coordinates, tie a scanned image of that map onto the world in ArcGIS Pro, and then you could digitize these different units, which is what we're actually going to get to here in just a minute. So now if you look over here, you should have your coordinates UTM, you should have the deadmanparkmu.tif file, the TIFF file, and you should have the PNG file. So the PNG file is the one with no spatial reference. I can get rid of that. This one, which looks identical, this one is actually tied to the Earth at these 4 points. So this one has been georeferenced. That's what it's called, basically. So if I saved this file and brought it into a different map, it would show up exactly here in Colorado, south of the Wyoming border every time because the spatial information is now attached to it. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and close the georeference. It's going to say there are unsaved edits. Assuming that you have that TIFF file and you got the low residuals and you're good to go, you can go ahead and say yes, continue. You don't need to save that. And when I come back here in just a second, we will start digitizing this image. So we'll start basically turning these polygons from polygons on this scanned sheet of paper into polygons that are features that we can work with in ArcPro. And make sure to save your project. If you've gotten this far, it's a good spot to save.